Hello, my name is Annalise Llewellyn, and I would first like to thank the people of India and Jadugora for sharing their lives with me. In India, roughly 350 million people are energy poor. That is, they have no access to electricity. Prime Minister Modi argues that nuclear now offers a viable climate change solution, yet experts argue that adding more nuclear will not benefit the poor. It will only reach the urban middle classes, and in fact it will worsen environmental problems. Today, drawing from people's movements across India, I will argue that nuclear is not a viable solution for climate change. I will borrow from Anand Singh's concept of frictions. In India, people's movements have become ants in the ear of the elephant. No matter how small, they create a friction that cannot be ignored. And Indian people are now choosing their own models of self-determination in choosing their energy futures. So I'd first like to talk about India's response to the Paris Climate Accords. India has committed by the year 2030 that at least 40% of its electricity will be generated from non-fossil fuel sources. In the year 2015, non-fossil fuel sources made up 30% of its total energy share, and so it will be increasing that by roughly 10%, and shrinking thus its dependence on gas and coal and other hydrofluorocarbons in order to meet those goals. The clean energy targets that India has set for itself include adding 100 gigawatts of solar, 60 of wind, and 15 of other renewables to meet its goals by 2022. The reality is that India does have 350 million people who are energy poor, and they have traditionally generated electricity and heat and cooked food with cow dung fuel in these cow dung patties, which you can see here stacked on the right-hand side of the photo. The left-hand side shows a different source of biomass from plant matter. However, nuclear power also is a big part of that equation, as Modi has designed it, and they do intend to increase their nuclear power roughly by tenfold, up from 6.8 gigawatts at present, aiming for an incredible 63 gigawatts by 2032. However, this raises a really important question, which is nuclear truly the best fit for India's energy poor? And that is because if you break it down to a unit per unit cost, nuclear is roughly 3 times the cost of solar, which is an incredible cost. And as we know, solar and wind and other renewables are dropping rapidly and becoming more and more affordable with innovation. India has just recently announced, the Modi government just recently announced that 10 new domestic reactors are in the planning stages. These have actually been in the planning stages in the pipeline for some time, but in May the government just announced that under its flagship Make in India program, these are offered as job creation projects, and they are supposed to help boost the economy. The first plant is Gorakhpur. It's 4 reactors in the north, in Haryana, which is quite nearby New Delhi. Secondly, here, Mahi Banswara in Rajasthan. Also, Chutka here in Madhya Pradesh. And then these reactors here in Kaiga in Karnataka in the south. In addition, there are 4 new sites, actually 3 new sites for imported reactors. Kudankulam is an existing reactor in the south. It's a Russian import. There's been tremendous people's resistance against this project that has been ongoing for since 2011. It's resulted in a tremendous amount of police brutality. Nevertheless, the government has contracted Russia to build an additional 4 reactors here in the south. In addition, the world's largest nuclear park is planned here for Jaitapur. 6 EPR, European pressurized reactors here planned for Jaitapur. And then Mithi Verdi, I'll tell you about in a moment. People's movement in Mithi Verdi actually resulted in the 6 reactors planned for Mithi Verdi being shifted to Kobada, to here in Andhra Pradesh. A little bit about these new reactor projects. Communities local host communities are very concerned. They represent an untested technology because the indigenous reactors are at 700 megawatts apiece, are larger, almost 200 megawatts larger in capacity than any of the existing reactors, and local communities are very concerned about what this means for the community. In Gorakhpur, which is in Haryana, again very nearby New Delhi, people are very concerned that this reactor is actually a brand new pilot technology that does not have a reliable source of water year-round, which it will absolutely need for its coolant. Gorakhpur depends on a water source, an irrigation canal known as the Bakra River, for its cooling water, and it will basically drink in 1/3 of this water, dump the contaminated heated wastewater back into the canal, and then it will be carried downstream to farmers. This canal is actually completely dry at least 3 weeks out of the year, and with climate change, it raises the concerns that the dry period may in fact increase. So as you can imagine, people in this community are very concerned. This gentleman is a farmer who has been very involved in resistance, and this is his wife on their farmland, with their livestock in the background, and they're very worried about what this means for their community. There was a large farmers' resistance, but the payouts from the Nuclear Corporation of India basically broke the back of the resistance, and many of these farmers have since relocated through the money that they were paid for giving up their land. Basically, their land was acquired for the plant. Next, a little story about Mithi Verdi. Mithi Verdi is located in Gujarat, and this is the resistance in Mithi Verdi has been building up awareness and doing local education with communities about the risks posed by nuclear to the local environment and to the human community as well. Ultimately, the government failed to acquire the land for this plant. The National Grain Tribunal, in the last couple of months, they ruled against the government's bid for the plant, and the project has now been shifted to Kobada in Andhra Pradesh. But Mithi Verdi villagers have raised the slogan, "Not here, not anywhere," and they vowed to travel across India to Kobada and to support the protest movement there. Jaitapur, where the world's largest nuclear park is being planned, this is a joint project between Areva and Mitsubishi. Local communities have adopted a range of nonviolent strategies, very much inspired by a Gandhian approach. They've been using hunger strikes, jail baharo, which is a voluntary arrest type protest movement, and they also have held many massive gatherings, protest marches, and have attempted to stop the prospectors from doing the soil samples. They also seek to sort of delay the project as long as possible because the French company Areva is in a serious financial crisis, actually went bankrupt earlier this year and is in the process of restructuring and being taken over by EDF. And so people in Jaitapur feel that they may have an opportunity to block the project if they can wait until Areva is financially insolvent. Moving on to another very important aspect of the nuclear industry, and that is fuel cycles and uranium mines. The oldest uranium mines are located in Jadugora, and this is one of the older mines, Bahatin mines. I first visited Jadugora in March 2017, and the local uranium mill, the company and the mine operator, UCIL, it claims that its mines pose no health risk to the surrounding community, but local villagers have documented a gradual decimation of human and animal health. And since 1998, an indigenous Adivasi rights organization known as JOAR has been investigating the impacts of uranium processing on humans. Specifically, most recently in May of 2017, there was a massive dust storm, and dust from this tailing pond number 3 blew directly onto these communities here, to this village Chatikocha, and also onto Talaitan village, and villagers began to suffer from the dust being deposited on the plant and animal life, on their homes. There have also been many pipeline ruptures this is the headquarters of the mill, and the tailings waste from processing the uranium is transported through this pipe across the street and into these tailing ponds here. Here's 1, 2, and 3, and they are uncovered, and they also do not have any kind of liner, so the local community has been very concerned. Here's a close-up view of one of the tailings ponds. However, unfortunately, the local community has reported devastating impacts of the mines. This is me speaking with a group of women in Batin. Women in Chatikocha, the village right next to tailing pond number 3, report that most of their pregnancies end in miscarriage. Women in villages that are slightly further away are able to carry their babies to term, but they have serious problems such as congenital deformities, cerebral palsy, blood cancers, and tumors. All are widespread. And people are very concerned about these health risks. Jawar has been successful in lobbying the UCILL to begin covering its uranium trucks transporting uranium. They've also pushed for clean drinking water to be provided to the communities closest to the tailing ponds. And in the last couple of years, they've been holding health camps where they bring doctors from West Bengal to assess the health condition of children who live in villages near the mines, and at least try to provide access to doctors for monitoring the health of these children. They've also been educating the community about the dangers of seepage from the tailing ponds, and then lobbying UCIL to provide this extra drinking water to these community members. This information from Jarugora with the horrors of uranium mining and what it has done to the local community, I'd like to offer the argument that, in fact, nuclear, rather than being a climate change solution, in fact brings more environmental problems, such as the issue of nuclear waste, which is an intractable problem that pretty much no one has been able to solve satisfactorily in the world. Obviously, uranium mining, when done improperly, has a tremendous safety burden for the local community. Under regular operation, nuclear plants have a tremendous amount of heated wastewater, which feeds directly into local bodies of water. And if there is an actual disaster or an accident, it's a tremendous burden on the local community in terms of economics and actual safety impact. There's also the question of management and whether or not, if governments are not transparent, this brings serious issues and concerns. And then ultimately the carbon footprint. I would argue that the nuclear industry has not been entirely honest about calculating all the pieces of the carbon footprint into its and the greenhouse gas estimates into its calculations up to this point. As such, I would like to mention and suggest that we think about Amory Levin's argument about opportunity cost. Opportunity cost basically means that for every dollar we invest in nuclear power, we're taking away funding from investment in alternative energy sources, primarily renewables such as solar, wind, biofuel, wave, geothermal, and other forms of renewable energy sources. As we all know, climate change is an urgent problem. We simply do not have the time nor the funding to spend massive amounts of money in waiting for these nuclear projects to come online while global warming and climate change continue to march onward, endangering the lives of many thousands and millions of people around the world. Nuclear power is ultimately too expensive. It will, in fact, worsen climate change because we will save less carbon per dollar spent. And this is again Amory Lovins, and reactors ultimately take too long to build. So I leave you with that as a way of thinking about what nuclear energy means for the global south, for the developing world, and urge that we come up with more localized solutions that are introduced and incorporate the self-determination and the innovation of local communities on the ground. Thank you.